We're finally shutting down your embarrassing little business, my brother Vincent declared in the bankruptcy courtroom, adjusting his tie with the confidence of someone convinced the outcome was already decided. My parents nodded from the gallery, my mother dabbing at pretend tears while my father's expression stayed fixed in stern approval. I stood quietly at the defendant's table, letting their attorney present the falsified petition while I waited for the moment that would undo everything they believed. But then Judge Margaret Holloway suddenly stopped mid-sentence, her pen hovering over the paperwork, her eyes widening as she read the company name listed in the filing. Counsel approached the bench. Both lawyers moved quickly. The judge's voice dropped to a sharp whisper I could barely make out. Is this the same Apex Defense Systems that just secured the $189 million Department of Defense contract? The one featured in the Wall Street Journal last week? Vincent's attorney muttered something I couldn't hear. Judge Holloway looked up, her gaze meeting mine with growing disbelief and irritation. I'm going to need extensive documentation before we proceed. Either this is the most careless petition I've seen in 3 decades, or someone is attempting fraud in my courtroom. Vincent's confident smile faltered. I founded Apex Defense Systems 8 years ago in a garage with $3,000 in savings. The Moretti family didn't do garages. We did prestige. My father, Antonio Moretti, owned a chain of luxury car dealerships. My brother, Vincent, was being prepared to inherit the business. My younger sister, Carla, married into an old money family and spent her time on charity boards and country club committees. And I, Gabriella, the middle child, the disappointment, had walked away from a Wharton degree to pursue what my father dismissed as playing with electronics. He scoffed when I explained my goals. That's a job, not a company. Get a real career, Gabriella. Work for a bank. Meet someone suitable. Defense technology has huge growth potential, I told him. You're 24. You don't know anything about running a business. You'll fail and we'll end up cleaning up after you. I won't fail. They all say that. You will. I left his office and stopped seeking his approval from that day forward. The first 5 years were exhausting. I lived on cheap food, barely slept, worked 20-hour days, and learned the defense contracting world through constant setbacks. I made errors that nearly took me under. Bad partnerships, missed timelines, a contract dispute that wiped out what little savings I had. My family watched from afar, waiting for the collapse they expected. Still playing with computers? Vincent would ask at holidays, his voice dripping with condescension. Still working on your little hobby? Dad would add. We're worried about you, Mom would say. Code for, we're embarrassed. I stopped attending holidays after the 3rd year. Defending myself took energy I needed for my company. And somehow it worked. Apex Defense Systems created specialized cybersecurity protocols for military communication systems able to detect and counter intrusion attempts in milliseconds. We secured our first government contract in year 4, our second in year 5. By year 7, we had 47 employees, $12 million in annual revenue, and a reputation as one of the most innovative defense tech startups in the country. The $189 million car contract came 6 weeks ago, a multi-year agreement with the Department of Defense to deploy our technology across 3 military branches. It would elevate Apex from a rising company to a major defense contractor. The Wall Street Journal covered it. Industry publications analyzed our work. Investors suddenly wanted meetings. My family knew none of this. I intentionally kept them out of my professional life, using my married name, Gabriela Santos, for all public appearances. A few distant relatives may have seen articles, but no one connected G. Santos, CEO, to the daughter they'd written off. I preferred it that way. Their validation was meaningless to me, but their interference, apparently, was not. The bankruptcy petition arrived 3 weeks after the contract announcement. Vincent filed it, claiming Apex owed him $2 million from an investment he supposedly made in year 2. The petition accused me of defaulting on repayment terms, claiming the company was insolvent and creditors needed court protection. Every claim was false. Vincent had never invested a cent. He'd never shown interest beyond mockery. The documents included in the petition, contracts, loan papers, financial statements, were all fabricated. It was blatant fraud. Fraud that could cripple a company by tying up assets, frightening investors, and jeopardizing government contracts that required stability. I called my lawyer immediately. "They're trying to force you into bankruptcy with forged documents," she said after reviewing the filing. "It's unbelievably reckless. A forensic review will expose the forgery almost instantly, but in the meantime, it creates enough legal noise to delay your DoD contract." "That's the goal," I said. "Vincent knows something big is happening and wants to interfere." "How would he know?" "My mother's cousin works at a firm that handles some compliance paperwork. She probably saw a reference and mentioned it casually." I sighed. "They have no idea what I've built. They just know I have a government contract and decided to meddle." "But why try to destroy your success?" Patricia asked. "Because my success proves they were wrong, and some people can't handle that." The hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning. I arrived early, wearing my usual understated professional attire, high quality, not flashy, commanding but not loud. My lawyer, Patricia Acuno, joined me at the table with 3 boxes of documentation proving Apex's actual financial condition. Vincent came in with our parents, clearly trying to make an impression. He wore a tailored suit from his dealership promotions. Mom dressed in dark colors as if attending a memorial. Dad looked like a patriarch prepared to restore family honor. They didn't acknowledge me. Not a nod, not a glance. I wasn't family. I was a problem. "Finally facing consequences," Vincent said loudly to his lawyer. "Should have happened long ago." A small audience of regular court observers, a journalist, and people waiting for later cases sat scattered in the gallery. None knew they were about to witness something remarkable. Judge Holloway entered. I'd researched her thoroughly, 3 decades on the bench, meticulous, no patience for dishonesty. If anyone would see through Vincent's scheme, it was her. The hearing began with Vincent's lawyer outlining the alleged debt, the supposed default, and the need for court intervention. "Your Honor, the defendant has repeatedly avoided repayment of a large family loan, choosing instead to fund an unprofitable venture that has never shown financial stability." Judge Holloway raised a hand. "The company name, Apex Defense Systems, based in Alexandria?" "Yes, Your Honor." She typed something into her computer and went completely still. Then she called both lawyers to the bench. The whispered discussion lasted several minutes. I watched Vincent's confidence crumble. His lawyer looked shaken. My father leaned forward, straining to hear, his expression shifting from smug to uneasy. Finally, Judge Holloway spoke clearly. "We will recess for 30 minutes. During this time, I want complete documentation from both parties. Counsel for the petitioner," she fixed Vincent's attorney with a cold stare, "I strongly recommend verifying every document you submitted. If I find fraudulent filings, the consequences will be severe." The gavel fell. Vincent rushed to his lawyer. "What's happening?" "What did she say?" "I used the recess to organize my documentation. Patricia spread the evidence across our table. Real financial statements showing $12 million in revenue, strong cash reserves, the redacted DoD contract, investor letters, tax records, audit reports, and 8 years of legitimate business documents. Alongside them were the forensic findings. Vincent's loan agreements had been created 6 days earlier. Metadata exposed the forgery. The signatures were sloppy imitations. The financial numbers were fiction. 30 minutes later, Judge Holloway returned. "I've conducted preliminary research," she announced. "Apex Defense Systems is not a failing company. It appears to be a highly successful defense contractor that recently—" The judge reviewed the file again. "Apex Defense Systems has just secured one of the largest cybersecurity contracts of the fiscal year." She shifted her attention to Vincent's attorney. "Would you care to explain why you filed for bankruptcy against a company with no signs of financial instability?" The lawyer fumbled with his paperwork. "Your Honor, my client submitted documentation of a debt." He hesitated. "Documentation that, even at first glance, doesn't align with the company's public financial records or recent press coverage." Judge Holloway turned toward me. "Miss Santos, perhaps Ms. Moretti, since the petitioner is your brother, would you like to respond to these allegations?" I stood. "Your Honor, there is no debt. There was never an investment. Every document submitted is false. My brother has never participated in Apex Defense Systems in any form. This filing is an attempt to undermine my company because he is uncomfortable with my success. That is a significant claim. the judge said. And I have significant proof. I nodded to Patricia, who began distributing our documents. These, I continued, are our verified financial statements prepared by certified accountants and supported by annual audits. This is the forensic report showing the petitioner's documents were created less than a week ago using templates that do not match legitimate agreements. And this, I added, is a timeline of my brother's public remarks about my company over the past 8 years, showing a consistent pattern of dismissal and hostility. Vincent rose abruptly. This is absurd. She's my sister. I have every right to collect what she owes. What debt? I asked evenly. State the date of the alleged loan. Identify the bank account used to transfer funds. Produce even one piece of evidence that survives basic inspection. He said nothing, because he couldn't. The truth was simple. There was no loan, only resentment disguised as legal action. Judge Holloway reviewed the submissions for nearly 20 minutes. The room stayed silent. Vincent's attorney looked sick. My parents' earlier confidence was gone, replaced by the realization that nothing was unfolding as they expected. At last, the judge spoke. I've examined the materials from both parties. The forensic findings are compelling. Metadata clearly confirms the petitioner's documents were created recently, not years ago as claimed. The financial records from the defendant show a company with substantial assets and no debt to the petitioner. She faced Vincent directly. Mr. Moretti, this petition is dismissed. However, your involvement with this court is not concluded. Filing a fraudulent bankruptcy petition is a federal offense. I am referring this matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office for potential charges of perjury and fraud. Vincent turned pale. Your Honor, this is a misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding, she interrupted. You submitted falsified documents and claimed non-existent debts. You attempted to force a financially stable company into bankruptcy through deceit. She removed her glasses. Interfering with a Department of Defense contractor can also bring additional federal charges. The government takes such action seriously. He stammered. National security? It's just my sister's tech company. Your sister's company provides cybersecurity infrastructure to the United States military, she said. Targeting it is not only fraudulent, it may pose national security concerns. She looked back at me. Ms. Santos, I apologize that your time was wasted by this baseless filing. Your company's reputation will not be harmed by this proceeding, and the record will reflect the fraudulent nature of the petition. Thank you, Your Honor. Case dismissed. The courtroom shifted into immediate confusion. Court officers approached Vincent and his attorney regarding the criminal referral. My parents tried to leave quietly. I caught my father's eye. His expression was difficult to read, some mix of frustration, shock, and reluctant recognition that the situation had spiraled far beyond their expectations. Mr. and Mrs. Moretti. My voice stayed controlled. I'm assuming you were aware of this. My father turned. Gabriella, this was Vincent's doing. You sat in the gallery supporting him while he attempted to sabotage my company. Don't pretend you had no part in it. We thought we were helping, he said. Helping who? I asked. Your son commit federal crimes? Or yourselves feel better about dismissing me for 8 years? Mom stepped closer. We didn't think it would go this far. We believed the company was struggling. Vincent told us. Vincent said what he wanted you to hear, I replied. And you accepted it because it was easier than acknowledging you were wrong about me. I gathered my documents. The $89 million contract is real. The 47 employees who rely on Apex are real. The technology we've created, technology that protects American service members, is real. You tried to damage all of it because my success made you uncomfortable. Gabriella, I'm done. Whatever legal consequences Vincent faces are his responsibility. Whatever story you tell yourselves is yours. Do not contact me again. Family does not try to dismantle each other's work with forged documents. I walked out of the courthouse without looking back. The applause died so fast it felt like the room itself exhaled in confusion. My father's expression never changed as he set his glass down. Sarah, he said quietly, do you want to tell everyone or should I? My wife froze. My brother, still standing, still smug, shifted uneasily. Dad, Sarah whispered, please don't. But it was too late. My father pulled a folded envelope from his suit jacket. I had the hotel staff check something for me, he continued. Since my sons came here early this morning, together. Murmurs rippled across the tables. He opened the envelope and held up 3 glossy prints. Security photos. My brother entering the bridal suite at 2:14 a.m., staying 47 minutes, leaving with his tie in his hand. A low gasp rolled across the guests. My brother's face went sheet white. Sarah grabbed the back of her chair like the floor had tilted. That's not what it looks like, she stammered. Then explain it, my father said. My brother opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His knees buckled and he collapsed into the chair behind him. Sarah swayed, her bouquet slipping from her fingers. I finally spoke. Before anyone lies again, I said, I'd like to ask one question. I turned to my father. Dad, did Mom tell you what she saw last night? Sarah's entire face drained of blood. And that was the moment the room finally understood something far worse had been happening, long before the wedding. My mother didn't rise. She didn't need to. Every eye in the room shifted toward her as she dabbed the corner of her mouth with a linen napkin, slow, controlled, the way she always did when she was furious but pretending not to be. Victoria? My father asked gently. She finally looked up at Sarah. I wasn't going to say anything today, my mother said, her voice steady. I didn't want to ruin my son's wedding. A brittle silence spread through the hall. But since the truth seems determined to come out, she placed her napkin down. Yes, I saw you. Sarah blinked rapidly. Saw me? What? My mother's gaze didn't waver. Leaving the guest house last night, she said. At 3 a.m., wearing a robe that didn't belong to you. My brother's head snapped up. And, my mother continued, I saw the man you were with. The room erupted. Whispers, gasps, chairs scraping the floor. Sarah shook her head violently. No, that's not. But my mother leaned forward. It wasn't my son. The whispers died instantly. My father slowly turned toward her, shocked. My brother looked like he'd been punched. Sarah clutched her stomach, breath quickening. I stepped closer. Then who was it? I asked quietly. Here's your text, presented exactly as written, word by word. My mother didn't break eye contact with Sarah. Tell him. Sarah's chest rose and fell in short, panicked bursts. Her hands shook. It was, she choked out. It was. But before she could finish, the ballroom doors slammed open. Every head whipped toward the entrance, and the man standing there made half the guests stand up in shock, because he wasn't supposed to be anywhere near this wedding. The heavy doors crashed against the walls, and the music cut out instantly. For a moment, no one breathed. The man in the doorway straightened his jacket, scanned the room, and locked eyes with Sarah. Her knees buckled. My father swore under his breath. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My brother looked like he'd seen a ghost. I understood why. Because the man standing there, uninvited, unwanted, and very much not supposed to be anywhere near my wedding, was Daniel Carter, Sarah's ex-fiancé. The man she'd sworn she blocked, sworn she left behind, sworn she never spoke to again. The man she insisted had moved to another country. But there he was, alive, present, and staring straight at her. What are you doing here? Sarah whispered, voice cracking. Daniel took a few steps forward, unhurried, confident, as if he owned the room. I'm here, he said loudly, clearly, because you called me last night. Gasps exploded through the hall. My brother's jaw unhinged. My mother closed her eyes like she already knew where this was going. I felt something hot and cold crawl up my spine. Sarah shook her head, trembling. No, Daniel, please don't. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and tapped the screen. A voice recording began to play. Her voice. Daniel, I made a mistake. I can't marry him. I still love you. The room went dead silent. My chest tightened as if someone had wrapped a fist around my ribs. But Daniel wasn't done. He stepped closer until he stood only a few feet from her. And, he said, lowering his voice, you weren't wearing your own robe when you came to see me. Sarah collapsed into a chair, hands covering her face. My father exhaled sharply. My brother whispered, Oh my God. I stared at her. Sarah, I said quietly, was the robe mine? She shook her head. Whose was it? I pressed. She didn't answer. Because she couldn't. Daniel sighed, almost pitying. It belonged to him, he said, pointing straight at my brother. And that's when everything shattered. For a full 3 seconds, no one reacted. Then the room erupted, voices overlapping, chairs scraping, relatives whispering so loudly they may as well have been shouting. My brother stood on shaky legs. Sarah, please, tell them he's lying, he begged. Tell them you weren't wearing my robe. But she didn't even look at him. Her face was buried in her hands, shoulders shaking, not with tears, but with the kind of silent panic that comes when every lie you've built collapses at once. Daniel folded his arms. Should I tell them the rest? He asked. Or do you want to? My brother stumbled back. What rest? Daniel tilted his head. You really think she came to me last night because she still loved me? His voice softened, almost sympathetic. She came because she was desperate. Sarah jerked her head up. Daniel, stop. I stepped closer, my pulse hammering. Desperate for what? Daniel hesitated for the briefest second, then sighed. To cover up what they did. The chatter died instantly. My mother straightened in her chair. My father's expression hardened. My brother took another step back, like he needed distance before the blow landed. I stared at Daniel. Cover up what, exactly? He reached into his pocket again, this time pulling out a folded slip of paper. She came to me because she needed somewhere to hide this, he said, holding it between two fingers. She said her fiancé, he nodded toward me, would never forgive her if he found out. Sarah lunged forward. Daniel, please give that back. But Daniel easily stepped out of her reach. It's your handwriting, he said calmly. You can explain it. He handed the note to me. My fingers shook as I unfolded it. A single sentence, written in Sarah's unmistakable, looped script. We cannot let him know the truth about the baby. The floor dropped out from under me. The guests collectively inhaled. My brother staggered, grabbing the back of a chair. My mother whispered, Oh, dear God. I looked at Sarah. The baby? My voice came out barely audible. What truth? She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears spilling now, finally too late. It's not yours, she whispered, but then she turned her head. Slowly, reluctantly, painfully, facing my brother. It's his. My brother collapsed for the second time that night. 6 months. That's how long it took for every single one of them to unravel, and for me to realize that the wedding disaster had been the best thing that ever happened to me. 6 months later, my brother still hasn't recovered from that night. After the wedding imploded and the truth about the baby exploded across the room, he tried to claim he had no idea, that he was manipulated, that he was just as blindsided. But people talk, and at weddings, they record. By the next morning, videos were everywhere. Him wearing the robe, Sarah walking in from his suite at 4 a.m. His face when she admitted the baby was his. His fiancée, yes, the one he was cheating on Sarah with, dumped him by voicemail. He moved back home with my parents, quit his job, and started spiraling. Last I heard, he's in weekly counseling and still can't show his face at family gatherings. People don't forget. Especially not this kind of scandal. Sarah kept the baby. But she didn't keep her job, or her reputation. When the truth came out, her boss restructured her department. Suddenly her position didn't exist anymore. No one fought for her. No one recommended her. No one hired her after. She told a mutual friend that she was in survival mode, living in her sister's spare room, trying to rebuild. The wedding venue sued her for damages. The cake vendor demanded payment. The photographer released a statement clarifying they were not responsible for any events that led to project termination. The last message she sent me was 3 words. I am sorry. I never answered. My parents. My parents tried to keep everything quiet. They blamed me, of course. If you hadn't made a scene, if you'd handled it privately, if you'd controlled your temper. But the truth was already out, and trying to rewrite it only made them look foolish. Their friends pulled away. Their reputation cracked. The family image they cared so desperately about, shattered beyond repair. They still reach out. I don't answer. People assume I fell apart after the wedding. They're wrong. I started over. And I started over clean. I sold the house Sarah and I were supposed to live in. I returned every gift. I unfollowed every single person tied to that disaster. I took the honeymoon trip alone, and it was the first time in years I felt like I could breathe. I went back to work, threw myself into everything I'd neglected, and built a life that finally belonged to me again. Here's your final section, presented exactly as written, word by word. I met new people, real friends, people who knew me for me, not as the guy whose fiancée slept with his brother. And last month, I started seeing someone, slowly, carefully, honestly. She knows the whole story. She didn't flinch. 2 weeks ago, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. The handwriting was shaky, like the words themselves weighed too much. It was from my brother. I don't expect forgiveness, he wrote. I just want you to know I finally understand what I destroyed. I folded it, put it in a drawer, didn't reply. Forgiveness isn't owed, it's earned, and he's nowhere near earning it. I didn't get the wedding I imagined. I didn't get the marriage I planned. But I got something better. A life without liars, a future without betrayal, and a family defined not by blood, but by loyalty. It's strange how a single day can split your life into before and after. My wedding day did that. But the after became something I never expected. 1 year later, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the sleeves of a crisp new suit. Not for a wedding this time, not for some milestone event, just a Tuesday. A normal day in a normal life that I fought hard to rebuild. The sunlight poured into the kitchen where Emma was packing her lunch for work, humming off key, hair in a messy bun she insisted wasn't cute but somehow always was. She looked up, smiled, and said, "You're thinking too loud." "I'm fine," I said, slipping an arm around her waist. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "We made it through a hell of a year. You're allowed to be proud of that." And I was, for the first time in a long time. What happened to everyone else? My brother, he's still serving the consequences of his actions. Not prison, not punishment from a court, but the kind that hits deepest, social irrelevance. People avoid him. No job wants him. Even his own friends don't trust him. He sent 2 more letters. I read them. I didn't reply. Some bridges burn so thoroughly that rebuilding them isn't healing, it's self-harm. Sarah, I heard she had the baby, a boy. Healthy. Innocent. She moved 3 states away to live with her aunt, trying to raise her son somewhere people don't whisper about her. I don't hate her anymore, but I don't wish to see her again either. Some stories close not with forgiveness, but with neutrality. My parents. They still send holiday cards, birthdays, texts, voicemails full of excuses. We were confused, we were misled, we didn't know the truth. Maybe they believe that. Maybe they don't. But I stopped needing their approval, stopped wanting their apologies. Peace doesn't always come from closure. Sometimes it comes from distance. And I am finally at peace. My life now. My home is quiet. My routines are mine. My choices are mine. I wake up next to someone who sees me, chooses me, respects me. Someone who doesn't get nervous when her phone buzzes. Someone who doesn't hide messages or turn rooms silent. Someone who doesn't shrink when honesty is required. Emma and I cook dinner together most nights. She dances terribly when she's happy. She reads mystery books at a pace that should be illegal. She tells me I deserve softness after all I went through. Sometimes I believe her. More often now, I do. A final moment. Last weekend, we walked through a small coastal town during sunset. The air was salt and warmth, the kind you feel more than smell. Without thinking, I said, "This feels like a life I wasn't sure I'd ever have." She took my hand. "You didn't lose anything that day," she said. "You were freed from it." And she was right. My wedding didn't fall apart. My illusions did. My family didn't betray me. They revealed themselves. Sarah didn't ruin my future. She saved me from a lifetime with the wrong person. Sometimes destruction is just disguised protection. I didn't get the wedding I planned, but I got the life I needed. And that is the better ending.